Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to this session on breaking the 700 barrier. My name is Rajat Sedana. I am one of the co-founders of eGMAT, and I'm going to be your main host today. Supporting me in this webinar, we have Atreya Roy. Atreya is a subject matter expert at eGMAT. He also deals with strategy. He's going to make sure that you guys get the most out of the session. So, Atre, if we can move on to the dual view, that would be great. So this session is slightly different. In this session, we will not. I mean, typically when we do breaking the 700 barrier sessions, they're about study plan. They're about subject matter. This session is going to be about this thing called strategic review, which is when you practice something, when you make a mistake, what feedback do you put in, and how do you use that feedback to constantly improve? Okay, so this actually starts with a stage where you've created that personalized study plan. You know exactly what to do, where you need to focus your time and energy on, and then post that point, we really take in. You start learning, and you get things right. You get make mistakes, and with every mistake, what feedback should you take? How should you improve? Is something that we're going to focus on over here. But before we go forward, we're going to solve 6 questions. Before we do that, there is some trivia time. What we want you to do is we want to show you some questions. Go to kahoot.it over here, as you can see, kahoot.it, and put in the game pin and the game pin. If you guys can put in the game um, put in the game pin, Atreya, that'd be great. All right, it seems the game pin is 8624305. As you start the game, you'd be able to see a few questions. These are fun questions. These are questions about stuff which stats that have been recently released. Okay, we have. And these are fun questions, so continue to enjoy. Okay. Oh, I think we have quite a few responses. Cool. This kind of adds entertainment to this. So the first one's an easy question. Where did we have most test takens in 2019? Seven answers. Yeah, Abhishek. 10 answers. Let's get a few more. Okay, cool. The correct answer is China. We only got one response over there. I know. Again, I'm colorblind, so I may be reading colors wrong. But yes, a lot of people think it's the U.S. Typically, it has been, but most tests, as per the stats that were released in 2019 by the GMAC, it was China. Okay, let's go to the next question, Abhijit. All right, Dandy 80. So the next question is, which country or group produced more 700 scorers in 2019? All right. Again, the answer is the US. And this is surprising stats. I mean, we think Indians and Chinese are really good test takers, but the US, despite not having most number of test takers, produced more 700 scorers in 2019. In fact, there's a very interesting trend that happened in 2018 and 2019, and I'm going to talk about for the next question over here. Um, so yes. If, by the way, this is good news for you. If you're an Indian or a Chinese, I mean, you are now one of the more relatively rare breeds, or so. And these are citizens of these countries. So these are not Indians or Chinese in the U.S. who are taking the test. We only count U.S. citizens while going to these answers. All right, let's kind of get to the next question. So this question says, which country has the highest proportion of test takers? So essentially, what this is saying is that if 1,000 people from each country took the test, where would you get most test takers? All right, now we have more belief in the US. And the answer is the US. And again, this came as a surprise to me. Again, and it's a surprise to all of you. But as per MBA.com, so about 15% of all test takers in the US, it's the correct answer is about 14.87% of all test takers in the US got to a score of 700 or higher. That number for India was about 13.5%. Number for China was about 11 point some percent or so. So as a proportion, the US wins, and which is very surprising given the fact that I think if I were to ask a question, where do people spend most time preparing, I'd get India or China over there. So, but as per stats from MBA.com, that's what it is. And let's get to the next question. And we have a few people moving up, but Dandy Yeti, man, you're killing it. And let's get to the last question. So this one says, how many of these scores are sent to masters plus MBA programs in the US? How many 700 plus scores? Which is the closest number? The correct answer is about 88,000. So the closest number is about 80,000 over there. So just to really tell you, I mean, US gets about 10 times as many 700 plus scores as the next competitor, which is, I believe, the UK. So yeah, some interesting trivia to get you guys started. Overall, the trend with regards to India and China from 2018 and 2019, those are the only stats that we have available, is that as a proportion, the number of test takers who've been taking the GMAT and scoring 700 plus, that proportion has been going down. And my guess is it's because of the shorter version of the GMAT, and it's because the shorter version is a lot less forgiving than the longer version over there. When you have fewer questions, you have fewer chances to come back. But with that, hopefully that was fun. And essentially, we have some notable scorers. And again, our winner today is Andy Yeti. Yes, you got 4 out of 4 correct. Good job on keeping those stats. All right. Thank you, Abhijit. That was fun. I hope that was fun. Go back. If you can go back to my slides are visible, that'd be great. Thank you. So we're going to talk about how do you get to that score of 700 or higher. Why? Because it seems to be a more rare commodity than it was 2 years back, which means that score of 700 or higher gives you a higher chance of getting that admission. It gives you a much higher chance of getting that scholarship. And we know a bit about it because we have delivered some success. And you can see one stat, but if you look at the number of success stories on on our YouTube channel, if you see the number of debriefs on GMAT Club share GMAT experience, again you'd see some very similar stats over there. So what are we going to focus on? We're going to focus on what core skills do you need to build for each subsection, and then once you make a mistake, how do you attribute that mistake to lack of one of those core skills over here? Um, when you learn something, when you want to get to that 90th percentile ability, you want to get to that 700 plus score, you need to get to that 90th percentile ability. You need to build those core skills. You need to build a method to solve a certain sort of question, and you need to do that targeted practice. And throughout each step, whether it's A, B, C, or D, you need to do this thing called strategic review, which is what we're going to talk about over here. So we'll start with the verbal section. We're going to solve 3 questions, 2 sentence correction, 1 critical reasoning question. All official questions, all reasonably difficult questions overall. The core skills that we're going to focus on is your ability to understand the meaning of this sentence, whatever question is given to you. And sometimes that meaning's not going to be given directly, so you'll have to infer that from the original choice, because you've got to really say, okay, what logically makes sense? So we're going to really talk about that. And building that ability is also a skill. When it comes to critical reasoning, this is more around critical reasoning. Infer the information based on given statements. You're going to see that in the CR question that we do. Visualize the conclusion. Visualize the statements over here. This piece visualizes something a lot of people fail to do over here. And then we're going to really focus on this pre-thinking skill as well. So, as I said, our agenda is going to be 2 SC questions, 1 CR question, and 3 quant questions over here. So with that, let's start with an SC question. Now, before we do that, we're going to talk about what is that strategic review process. And that strategic review process, whenever you solve a question, you look at the solution. If you make a mistake, ask yourself this first question: did I get the meaning right 100%? And if you got it right and still made a mistake, or if you got it right but didn't get it right for the correct reasons, then you have to really just put yourself in group A and then ask yourself, hey, why did you reject the correct answer choice? It potentially is 2 reasons. One is you either get an unfamiliar sentence structure, which means you see something that you've not heard, it seems awkward. It's not incorrect, but because it seems awkward, you reject it. Or there's a grammatical concept. Most of it relates to sentence structure, which leads to you inferring the meaning incorrectly. Or sometimes, you select an incorrect answer choice that's very elegantly written but distorts the meaning, and you couldn't identify that meaning distortion over here in this case. So either way, you're going to go in group A in this case. But if you didn't understand the meaning, then again, there are 2 cases. One is, did you somewhat understand the meaning? If that's the case, then hey, put yourself in group B and tell yourself you didn't spend that extra time to understand that meaning, and or maybe you focus just on the underlying portion. Either way, these behaviors are very easily corrected, and once you know this is what you need to do, I think improving becomes a lot faster. Or if you really didn't even understand half the meaning of that particular sentence, then tell yourself, I'm in group C, I need to start focusing on the meaning of the sentence over here. Okay, with that, we're going to go to question number 1. It's called new initiatives. Here is the question. You will have the poll over here. Again, remember, please share the answers only in the link that in the poll over here. That way, your responses don't bias others' opinion of what the correct answer choice. So then they get good feedback. Okay. With that, you guys have 2 minutes to answer this question. Good luck, guys. Adre, if my video can be actually moved, that'd be great. Yes, thank you. Another 30 seconds, guys, and you don't need this screen. You just need the poll window to put in your answers. So another 30 seconds. All right, guys, another 5 seconds. Get those answers in. If you're not sure, just mark what you think is correct. That way, you guys get feedback on this. 3, 2, and 1. Let me get the data one last time, and then move forward. So here is what we got about 14 responses, but 7 of them were here, 3 were here, and another 4 were here. So let's kind of look at this on this particular question. So this, by the way, is a difficult question. It's at that 90th percentile. When you look at the stats on GMAT Club, you're going to see that. So it also is a once you understand the meaning, once you do the right things, it's also is a question which shows the beauty of sentence structure and the intended meaning. So let's read this. With the patience of its customers and with its networks trained to the breaking point, the online company announced a series of new initiatives trying to relieve the congestion. What kind of congestion? That has led uh, uh, to at least 4 class action suits, lawsuits, and thousands of complaints from frustrated customers. So again, when you look at this, the key thing when you read the sentence and to be able to identify the meaning is to pause strategically over here. And to do that, and so that you can really extract the meaning. So say, hey, with the patience of its customers and its networks trained. So we have these 2 things that have happened. The online service company announced a series of initiatives. What kind of initiatives? What's the goal? They're trying to relieve this congestion. What kind of congestion? That has led to, so this congestion has led to at least 4 class action suits and lawsuits and thousands of complaints. So you can really see these 2 are at the same level, these 2 are at the same level, and see this structure over here. So when you look at this and say, what does the author sentence want to communicate? It wants to communicate that there are 2 negative situations, these 2 over here that are faced by this particular company. And there are 2 things that are on the verge of snapping. One is the patience of its customers as well as its network. And to really address this, the company has declared a new series of measures with the goal to reduce the congestion that has led to these issues overall. And then you really say, okay, when you do your error analysis, you kind of find 2 errors over here. One is the parallelism error, where you know what this says is, with this list element, with the patience of its customers, the online services company, it doesn't make sense to say that with the patience of its customers, the company announced something over here. So I think this list needs to be reworked. So that's one error. The other error that is there is also a modifier error, where you say this new initiative's trying. So when you think about who is trying, it's the company that is trying, not the initiatives over here. And the placement of this seems to indicate that the initiatives are trying. So this modifier error leads to the meaning communication error over here. So for both these reasons, choice A is incorrect. So let's see which is the correct answer choice. So choice A definitely is incorrect. Let's look at choice B. Choice B was quite popular. Choice B says, with the patience of its customers and its networks trained, over there. So there are 2 errors in choice B. The online service company announced a series of new initiatives that, again, here, what's trying to relieve the congestion? It's the initiatives, which is the first piece that you should have spotted over here. And you say, hey, the initiatives don't try to relieve, it's the company that is attempting to relieve. The initiatives are a means through which they're trying to relieve. And when you look at the list over here and you say, with the patience of its customers and its network over here, so these become 2 elements of the list. And you say, with the patience of its networks trained, that doesn't make sense. That's illogical. Because of this, choice B is wrong. Okay, let's look at choice D over here. And choice D says with its network and with the patience of its customers. So again, um, it's the same parallelism mirror as choice A, and these two things are not logical. And then it also has the idiomatic error, which is try relieving over here. So that's the idiomatic error, so which is why choice D is incorrect. Choice E corrects the parallelism error, which was there in choice A. It also corrects the modifier error, but it has a usage to try relieving, which is not idiomatic, and for that reason, choice E is incorrect, which leads to our correct answer choice. So this is incorrect, which is choice C, which says with its network and the patience of its customers trained to the breaking point. So with its networks trained to the breaking point and with the patience of its customers trained to the breaking point, the online services company has announced a series of new initiatives to try to relieve. Okay, to try to relieve, which means their goal is, their purpose is to try to relieve the network congestion. It corrects all the errors over here, the modifier error, the parallelism error. Both of them are corrected, both of them, and which is why choice C is the correct answer over here. So, depending on which choice you chose, you've got to give yourself feedback over here. And again, remember, this is our framework. So, if you chose choice B, if you chose choice B or choice D, you did not understand the meaning completely, and because choice B and choice D communicate an illogical meaning, and you were potentially either in group B or in group C over here. Okay, if you chose choice E, for those of you who chose choice E, you guys got the meaning, right? So you are in this camp over here. For you, the idiomatic gap is the reason why you selected choice E versus choice C, in this case. So tell yourself, hey, I got the meaning right. Give yourself a pat on the back. But on that idiom piece over there, that's where you need to really work. If, on the other hand, let me just go back to choices B and D, or even A. I know not everyone put in their poll responses, and let me clear this up over here. If you chose choice B or D, even though you may have understood the meaning somewhat, you couldn't attribute the sentence structure to the meaning, which means that you need to work on your sentence structure and attributing it to the meaning to really say what logical meaning is that sentence structure communicating. And so that's what you need to work on, because had you done that, you probably would have gotten this question correct. Okay. So with that, what did we learn? First of all, understand the meaning. Secondly, get the sentence structure. And you could falter at any of these points over there. And then look at grammatical errors to really say, is the meaning communicated properly as per the grammatical constructs that I know of over here. And as you do that, you would know precisely which step you falter on, and then you would know what you need to work on, because once you need to work on, none of this is rocket science, guys. It's fairly simple, but you need to isolate where you need to work on. Okay, are you guys ready for a second question? For the next question, are you guys ready? Again, like the prior question, we're going to share a poll. Like the prior question, once you click on it, you'll have the entire question in the poll. Okay, with that, let's get to the second question. Here you go. And the poll is there. Again, like the prior question, I'm going to give you guys about 2 minutes. All right, another 15 seconds, guys. All right. Let's make sure we get those answers in. Perfect. Okay, let's look at your responses. Sorry about that, guys, for that brief disruption. We have 29 responses. That's wonderful over here. Let me put in the stats. So about 41% of you, 41% of you chose choice E. But other than that, every other answer choice is very popular. So we have about 10% over here, 10% over here, 8%. And again, I'm rounding these off, so they might not add up. And about 15%. Yeah, 15% over here. And in this case, yes. Why does it say, oh, it's 29, not this thing. Okay, perfect. So let's kind of look at how we go about doing this. So again, as was the case for the prior question, we just slowly read the sentence. During an ice age, the buildup of ice at poles, so there's something that happens during the ice age, the buildup of ice at poles and the drop in water levels near the equator speed up the Earth's rotation, like a spinning figure skater whose speed increases when her arms are drawn in. So there's something happens during the ice age, this and this, okay, that leads to or that causes speeding up of Earth's rotation, and then that there's a comparison done to a spinning figure skater. Okay, so let's kind of do that same strategic pausing over here and say during an ice age, these two things, there's a list over here, lead to speeding up of Earth's rotation, and then like a spinning figure skater whose speed increases. So we know this first thing, this thing happens. These two things speed up the Earth's rotation. The process of this speeding up is compared to a figure skater. And what does the figure skater do? She increases her spin when her arms are drawn in, whose speed increases when her arms are drawn in. So this is directly from here. So when I look at this and I say, hey man, does this make sense? Because I get the meaning. What my as stated comparison really is I have A and B speed up at X like Y. And when you really say this, say, hey, I'm comparing a process in this case, the buildup of ice at pole and the drop in water level at the equator. This is a mechanism, a process. I'm comparing that to an entity like a spinning figure skater, and say this doesn't make sense. The logical comparison, even before you look at the answer choices, should be a process versus a process. So A and B, so these two factors, doesn't matter what these two factors are, speed up Earth's rotation in the same manner that a spinning figure skater increases her speed, and howsoever she does it. So the idea is whether she's expanding her arms or drawing her arms, and that doesn't matter. But the idea is to compare, a mechanism to a mechanism or a process to a process. Comparing a process to an entity is illogical. Comparisons must be logical. Okay, so with that knowledge, answering this question becomes very, very easy. Why? Because when you look at the first four answer choices. The first choice is like a spinning figure skater. We've said this is wrong. You can't compare a, a process to an entity. Choice B, again, it compares like the increased speed of a figure skater. So it compares this to the manner, to the increased speed, which again is wrong. Choice C is wrong for the same reasons as choice A, like a figure skater. We can't really compare this process to a figure skater. This one uses just as, okay, which means in the same manner, but again, in the same manner as a figure skater, but then does what? Nothing. It says who increases. So again, even though it uses just as, which is in the same manner, or what are the two uses of just as? Just as means in the same manner, or just as means at the same time. In this case, we're using it as in the same manner, but we're comparing it to an entity again for the same reason. Choices A, B, C, and D are wrong. The comparison is illogical, which leads us to choice E. Just as a spinning figure skater increases speed by drawing. So this is a mechanism. Just as in the same manner, a spinning figure skater increases speed by drawing in her arm. So you have a process compared to a process. Comparison is perfectly logical over here. And when you look at this, essentially, when you look at the reasons why you made a mistake, it's the same thing. Even though you somewhat understood the meaning of this, the sentence structure and the meaning that's communicated by each of these options was illogical, and this is something that you weren't able to spot, which is why you made that mistake. So if you were to really just say, hey, what's the feedback that I'm going to give myself out of this, it's not that, hey, you need to go and revise comparisons. What you need to do is you need to revise how sentence structure leads to the meaning being communicated by that particular sentence, because that's the reason why probably most of you got it wrong over here. Okay, so again, just purely from this sentence, comparisons should be clear and they should be logical. You'd be comparing like entities over here, where you're comparing a process to process and an entity to entity. You can't crisscross this. When you crisscross this, that becomes wrong. Just as simple as that. All right. And again, when you do this, when you give yourself such strategic feedback, that's when, a lot of what you see, these improvements happen in a short amount of time. That's when this happens. It's not that these people spend all the time studying. It's not that these people spend thousands and thousands of questions. What really happens is that these people, for every question that they spend 2 minutes solving, they spend 10 minutes doing that strategic review, telling themselves how are they not going to repeat that mistake. When they do that, they make fewer mistakes and they improve faster. And on the GMAT, because it's an adaptive test, every question that you answer correctly helps you get to that higher score. So doing that strategic review pays way more than just solving questions. It's, as I say, attributing causality is key to you succeeding. Okay, now if you want to learn more about how to apply this meaning-based approach, this is an approach that we pioneered 10 years back. We are in the third generation of this approach. Then join this webinar on this Saturday, which is the 30th of January. And we're going to talk about what this meaning-based approach is. We're going to go from the very grounds up and teach you how to apply this approach. And we're going to demonstrate how, using this one approach, you can solve questions that test verb tenses, modifiers, parallelism, comparisons, subject verb errors, and whatever errors the test is going to throw at you. And the two moderators or the two hosts for that would be Shraddha. Shraddha has probably written more sentence correction articles on GMAT Club than any other expert has. She is currently the number 3rd rated expert out of 300 experts on GMAT Club. And then Stacy. Okay. Also connect with me on LinkedIn. I have I think right now about 24,000 students who are connected. So this data is about a year old or so. And if you want to connect with students at other top B schools, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. We also share about 5 articles every week on my LinkedIn. Okay. With that, let's get into a critical reasoning question. And again, The three things that I want you to do for the CR question. First is visualize. Visualize. I'm going to give you 3 minutes to answer this question so that you will have ample time. So, Atre, if you can increase my video size, that'd be great. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes to answer this question, which means that you'll have ample time. And I want you to understand what the conclusion is. I want you to visualize that conclusion in your own words. I want you to be there as you do that. And do the same thing with answer choices, because when you make a mistake, it's either you're not visualizing the conclusion or the answer choices. And the second thing is understand how various elements in the argument connect. What are the pieces that help the author make the arrive at the conclusion? Which are the pieces that kind of where the author's is defending against, and that logical structure is really important. And then formulate what would the correct answer choice do. That's what we call as the pre-thinking question over here. And you see these words A, B, and C. You make mistakes because you either don't do A, B, or C, or you don't do multiple, or some people actually don't do both A and B correctly. So tell yourself, do these and you're going to get to the correct answer. Make a mistake on either one of these and then you're going to falter. Okay, Atreya, let's go back to the full question view, because we're going to share the question. And here is the question. And again, as was the case in previous questions, please put your answers on the poll. Do not post your answers in chat. You guys have been really good about it. I want to thank you guys for that. I'm going to mute myself. You have 3 minutes, as I mentioned. Last minute, guys. Get those answers in. Just about 40 more seconds. All right, last 10 seconds. It's the last time to get those answers in, last time to get that feedback. 3, 2, and and 1 over here. That's wonderful. Okay. So many of you got this question right. And I want to really see how many of you got this question right uh, overall for the right reasons. So let's look at this. This is a good question. I'd say it's a difficult question. So let's start with this conclusion over here. The question stem, by the way, because that kind of tells us what the conclusion is in many ways. Which of the following, if true, most seriously weakens the force of evidence cited? So when you really say, okay, this uses the word weaken, so it is a weakening question. And what does it weaken? The force of evidence cited. Now, when we talk about weakening the force of evidence, we are not really saying weakening the evidence itself or already saying, hey, the evidence is wrong. This is not what this is talking about. What this is saying is force evidence means the impact of evidence, which means, and what's the impact of evidence? What is this evidence used for? This evidence is used to draw a conclusion, which means if you want to weaken the impact of that evidence, you are talking about weakening the conclusion, because that's the reason why that evidence is there in this particular argument. So let's see what's going on in this. So which of these statements is the conclusion as per this? You have 1, 2, and 3. Which of these 3 statements is where the conclusion is? Can you guys put in your answers over here? At this time, I want you to put those answers in chat. So yeah, which of these, where is it that the conclusion is there? So as you put your answers in, let's just go through this. It is widely assumed that people need to engage. There's a very key word over here, which means need to. A need to, in many ways, has the same impact as must. You need to invest in this stock to get rich, which means you must invest in this stock to get rich over here. It is widely assumed that people need to engage in intellectual activities such as solving crossword puzzles or mathematics problems in order to maintain mental sharpness as they age. So when you read that first sentence over here, I want you to observe 2 things. One is the need to part, which is the must aspect over here, and then the context piece over here, which is this is talking about the general perception. It is widely assumed when you talk about this part over here, it's that the general perception is that as people age, this is about people aging, not youngsters, they need to really engage in certain intellectual activities, and then there are examples of those given if they want to maintain their mental sharpness. So to maintain mental sharpness, remember the first sentence we had 2 over there to reduce network congestion. 2 means with the purpose of doing that. Okay, so this is what the general perception is, and thank you for that feedback on which statement is the conclusion. And the author says, in fact, however, simply taking, and I always say the author because I want to, that's kind of who builds that conclusion. He says, in fact, however, simply taking, talking to other people, and that is participating in social interaction, suffices. So what the author, if you were to draw inferences based on these 2 statements, the inference that draw an inference question is that, hey, you don't need to engage in these intellectual activities. That need is no longer there. If you just introduce social interaction, you should be good. And then, so this is kind of where the main conclusion is. This part is where the main conclusion is over here. And then statement 3 is written to support that conclusion. And it says evidence to this. What is this? This is the fact that it suffices comes from a study showing that the more social contact people report, the better their mental skills. So let's kind of look at this and see how, let's visualize the conclusion, let's create the logical structure, let's form that pre-thinking question, and then see how weakness jump out at us. So we haven't looked at the answer to, even though we have, but the weakness that we're going to construct for this particular argument are going to be beyond what the answer choice really says. You're going to construct more weakness. So what the author is saying is, to stay sharp as you age, with this context over here, you don't need to engage in those intellectual activities. It's okay. The need to, he's not saying that that's not going to help. What he's saying is that's not a must. If you just do social interaction, that's okay. All right. So again, the logical structure, this is what the author is trying to assert. Statement 2 And this is a supporting statement. You can really see the part over here, and this is the general belief. And the main conclusion goes against that general belief, and you can see the need to is highlighted. So let's kind of formulate that pre-thinking question, which will help us get to the weakness. So read this. I'm going to read this out slowly. What new information will reduce your belief? So will reduce your belief means will make you believe less in the conclusion. What is the conclusion? That to maintain mental skills, to main, that to maintain mental skills, social interaction can be a viable alternative to solving intellectual puzzles. Or you can say that you don't need to solve intellectual puzzles. We need to weaken that notion that social interaction can be a viable alternative to solving intellectual puzzles for old people. That context is very important, given the fact that we have this data point that more the social interaction, more the mental skills or social interaction has shown to increase mental skills. So what new information will reduce my belief? And let's kind of look at some of these weakeners. So what if the first thing which is there is, when you look at line 1 and line 2, they are about the right context. They're about as people age or older population. Line 3 has no context given to it. And a lot of times in real world, people do that. They show some evidence which is given in another context, and they'll cite that evidence and really try and fit it in, which is what's happening over here. So what if the study, we're not saying the study is wrong, it's just that it doesn't apply to older people. What if the study were done on older people? Again, look at this. More social contact people report. It's not about people who age, it's in general people. It could be younger people, the better their mental skills. Okay. What if the study were done on younger people? Then in that case, this would be an easy weakener. You're kind of just reducing the impact of it. What if, yes, the principle may be true, but you can't really do this? I mean, that's not something which is possible for you to do. I mean, many of you can take the online GMAT if you can't go to the test center, but if you don't have an internet connection in your house, you really, that's not an option for you. So you need to figure out how to go to a test center. That need to is true for you. So what if most people as they age or they're unable to interact socially? Why? Because they become immobile and they can't, their ability to interact with other people goes down. Or what if as you age, even before your mental sharpness declines, even before that decline sets in, your ability to engage socially automatically decreases, which means that, hey, to be able to engage socially, you need that mental sharpness up front over there. So if that's a precursor to that decline in mental sharpness. Look at each of these three weaknesses. Can you see how each one of them reduces your belief in that recommendation? What is the recommendation? That you don't need to engage in intellectual activities. Just social interaction would suffice. Can you see that? Okay. So essentially what you're really saying with weakener 2 and weakener 3 is that this principle works in general, but not for the segment that we are targeting over here. Okay, so let's kind of look at each of these answer choices and figure out why they are incorrect. Choice A says, as people grow older, they're often advised to keep exercising their physical or mental capacity. So this is a general recommendation that's given to people. Now, if that's a general recommendation, does it mean that ask yourself as a conclusion, does it mean that, hey, I don't need to do these intellectual activities and just social interaction? Does it increase my belief that this is a general recommendation? Does this new information increase my belief in that conclusion? The answer is no. This is a general advice given to people. There's no talk about what's the impact of it. So no, that doesn't really do anything. Choice B, which is our correct answer, says that many medical conditions that adversely impact a person's mental sharpness also tend to increase that person's social isolation. So what it's saying is that, hey, it's giving you that common cause for decline in both mental sharpness and the ability to interact. It says, hey, as you age, or medical conditions and treatment that as it impacts your mental sharpness, you also are unable to unable to do this social isolation. So yes, while that proof in statement 3 may be true, it may not be applicable to these people, which means that to maintain that mental sharpness, you have no other option but to simulate, but to engage in those intellectual activities. Why? Because you can't socially interact. If this is true, then that your belief in the conclusion that they don't need to they don't need to engage in intellectual exercises, that belief in that conclusion goes down. Okay, so again, the key word over here being the need piece. Okay, choice C just gives you a simple fact. So many people are proficient both in social interactions and this, so which is there. Okay, so what? Again, what impact does it have on the conclusion that, hey, you don't need to do one or the other, or you don't need to do those intellectual activities? How does it tell you that? Choice D, it says this, it tries to really debunk the study. It says the study did not collect data, but analyze data bearing on the issue from prior studies. So does it mean that the study is wrong? No, it just talks about how the data was collected. It doesn't say the data collected was wrong. It's just that, hey, it wasn't the people who did the analysis were not the ones who went and surveyed everyone. Okay, it was people who did the analysis was probably someone who got the data from somewhere, which means you could say they could be specialists. That's how many things work. Choice C, which is a very popular choice, very popular incorrect choice. That is, it says the task for evaluating mental sharpness for which data were compiled. Again, what data are we talking about? We're talking about the data in the survey were more similar to mathematics problems than to conversation. So remember, we said we evaluated this group, which group? This group that engaged in social interaction, and their mental capabilities were pretty good, and it just talks about, when you think about what this is saying, is how that study was evaluated. In fact, what it's saying is, even though we know this group engaged in social interaction, let's call it SI, yet the tasks that were used to evaluate them, they were more similar to um, intellectual problem solving, IPS, let's call it. So what it's saying is, hey, social interaction probably builds those skills which this does. Does it weaken? No, it probably, for me, it's irrelevant. It probably strengthens my belief overall. Why? Because it's saying that, hey, these people did social interaction, and these people were proficient in tasks that were more similar to mathematics problem solving. So it increases my belief in the conclusion rather than reducing my belief. For people who chose choice E, can you really see how this can't be the weakener? First of all, think about what this choice is saying. It's talking about how that study was evaluated tasks. It doesn't talk about its implication on the target group. It doesn't talk about the context, which is as people age. Okay. So what would you really do if you got this question wrong? You're going to ask myself, was I able to visualize the conclusion? Was I able to figure out that link of need to? Was I able to visualize the answer choice? If you marked an incorrect answer, choice E or choice C. And the entries that you're going to put in your error log as you do this is, hey, A1, I've got to spend more time to visualize the conclusion. And I've got to really understand the meaning of these words. Or in this case, I'm not doing that. If you were able to visualize everything over there, but were unable to visualize that answer choice, tell yourself, I've got to spend more time visualizing. I've got to do that step. I've got to be more deliberate while doing that step. If you're an eGMAT student, these are the two places where where you'd get this insight. If you did not understand the purpose of this statement, some of you really said statement 3 was the main conclusion. Clearly, you didn't understand the purpose of each statement. You were unable to create that logical structure, the role that each statement played. Again, go to the logical structure and the assumption pre-thinking files over there. And if you weren't able to pre-think over there, if you weren't able to formulate this question, weaken concept file, and then spend some more time on pre-thinking over there. So as you do that, you're going to find that you get a lot better at doing this. Critical reasoning by far is out of sentence correction, reading comprehension, NCR is probably the more challenging of these two. So out of these three, in my opinion, it's the most challenging part to improve. It may seem very logical to a few people. Certain people get it very, very naturally. But then, with regards to conscious improvement, there are many elements to it. You've got to think outside the argument. It requires a very, very organized thought process. And there are just so many ways in which we can trick you guys. Um, that if you're not organized in this, if you don't have those core skills um, uh, outlined, if you don't do pre-thinking, as questions become difficult, you're going to find a hard time approaching them. As an example, by one of our former students, he scored 97 percentile. He actually scored 35th percentile first, and then once he started doing pre-thinking, he scored 97 percentile. He said pre-thinking is a game changer. When it gets to those 700 level questions, you have to do pre-thinking over there. Why? Because it allows you to understand on that logic, and it ensures that you don't deviate from that key argument when choices such as choice E show up. This guy has the link over there. I think it's in the chat pod. You can really download his ESR. He recently got into both Columbia and Booth. Okay. Again, for those of you who need help figuring out which subsections you need to focus on, whether it's number properties, whether it's word problems, whether it's critical reasoning, for those of you who don't have a personalized study plan, who don't have an idea of by when would you be ready for the GMAT, we do offer a few limited slots on a first come first serve basis to book a call. So you can click on this page. When you get there, you'd really see various scenarios, which some of them may apply to you, so others may not. Choose the one that applies to you, read the case study, and again go from there. As you do that way you'd get assigned an appropriate expert. Okay. With that, let's go to the quant part of this. We are, I think, doing okay on time. Quant usually goes a bit faster because it's just this is it's there's there are no two things with regards to right or wrong over there. So, what are we going to focus on in quant? We want to focus on these few things called process skills. When it comes to solving GMAT quant's actually fairly elementary. The application actually is a bit more tricky. And the reason why most people don't get to a Q50 or a Q51 or even a Q49 is because they lack on one of these process skills, 6 process skills that we talked about. And we actually recently launched our brand new quant course. It's about 50% launched. We launched it in about around the 15th of December or so. And this entire course is built on process skills. So what process skills are you going to focus on? The first one that we're going to focus on is infer information, infer and extract information, extract insights out of the information that's given to you. The second that we're going to focus on is translate. The third, simplify. You're going to see application of each of these process skills in this. One very important process skill in DS question, and we're going to solve 3 DS questions, is consider all cases. You're going to see us do that, as well as applying constraints. So what I want you to do is solve these questions. Be very religious with regards to solving these questions, and if you do them well, you do them well. If you make a mistake, as you see the solution, put in the chat box where is it that you made a mistake, and you'd really see what you need to improve. Again, it's about that specific feedback that's personalized to you. When you get feedback that's personalized to you, that is when you improve. Um, with that, here is our first question. Atreya, if we can move me out of the video, out of the presentation screen, and we have a bunch of videos on process skills as well on our YouTube channel. We have about 20 odd lessons over there, which are there on our YouTube channel. And then the first question is here. Again, please put your answers in the poll link that's provided to you. Do not post them in the chat. And you have about 2.5 minutes to answer this question. Hey Bashar, please don't post your responses here, as mentioned on the screen. Post your answers um, in the link that's given to you. Okay, guys, we have about 20 more seconds. Let's get those answers in. Five, four, three, two, and one. The overall accuracy for this question is 43%. Clearly, this is a difficult question over here. So let's kind of see how we're going to solve this question. Okay. Um, so let's start with the question statement. One of the first things you have to do when solving any data sufficiency question is just look at the question statement and say, is there something that I can infer based on it? Can I simplify this? Those are the two core skills that I need to use on the original question stem. And the question stem is really saying, are there any constraints? The question stem simply saying, what is the value of x? We don't know whether x is an integer or whether x is a real number. We don't know if it's a natural number. So since we don't know anything, we're going to assume that x is a real number. Other than that, there are no constraints that are given on the value of x. And then it's asking us what is the value. It's not saying, hey, is it positive, is it negative? It's saying what's the precise value. Okay, so let's look at this over here. We're going to analyze statement one. Statement one says x to the power 4 plus x squared plus 1 is equal to 1 by this, 1 by the reciprocal of this. So a number is equal to, or a term in this case is equal to 1 by that term itself. So tell me what is the value of x. So what do? We actually want to simplify this. So we actually take the denominator, we multiply both sides by the same term over here. So which kind of cancels this one out, and we get x to the power 4 plus x squared plus 1 whole square equal to 1. Okay. Now, what do? We've got to simplify this. This is in the form of a square. So we take the square root and we get two cases. And this is where you put in the core skill of consider all cases. Wherever you see this, these are our core skills. Let me see if I can make this black. Wherever you see this, these are core skills. So the first thing is that when you take a square root, x to the power 4 plus x squared plus 1 could be plus 1, which means that you cancel this 1 and this 1 over here, which means if you simplify this, x squared multiplied by x squared plus 1 is equal to 0. Why? Because these two terms canceled out. It's a product of two terms, which is 0, which means that when product of two terms is 0, either one of these terms needs to be 0. Okay. The other option is which is there is that x squared plus x to the power 4 plus x squared plus 1 is minus 1, which means when you take this over here, you get the same thing, x to the power 4 times x squared multiplied by x squared plus 1. So term 1 multiplied by term 2 is equal to minus 2. Okay, so these are the two cases. This is where the core skill of consider all cases comes in. So when you look at this, there are two options that you get out of this. You say either x squared is 0, this is directly coming from here, or which means x is equal to 0, or you could say x squared plus 1 is 0, which means x squared is equal to minus 1. Both of these come from this. So x squared is equal to 0, and this comes from this over here. Now, there's one possible unique value. And this, when you look at this and say, hey, is it possible when I apply my constraints, is that possible? The answer to that is no. Why? Because x squared can never be negative. On the GMAT, we have real numbers. We do not have imaginary numbers, which means the square of a number is always non-negative, which means x squared cannot take minus 1, which means there's one unique value that comes from this, that is x is equal to 0. Okay, now let's kind of look at this expression over here. I'm just looking at this expression and then say, hey, product of two numbers, can that be minus 2? And the answer to that is no. Why? Because we know x squared cannot be negative and 1 plus x squared cannot be negative either. So, and product of two positive numbers can never be negative Hence, this doesn't yield any value as well. So just with statement A, I get one unique value, which is uh, x is equal to 0, which means statement A is sufficient. Okay. Now, which means I have two options, choice A or choice D. For those of you who chose choice C, or for those of you who chose choice E, can you tell me which of these core skills, or we call them process skills, were you unable to apply? Where did you falter? Which process skill did you falter on? Can you put that response in? While you do that, let's talk about statement 2 over here. Statement 2 says x cubed plus x squared is equal to 0. Again, uh, we just, whenever you have this, try expressing it as a product of two numbers. Why? Because we always know how to apply constraints, where you can say term A multiplied by term B is equal to 0. As we do that, there are two options, which is x squared is equal to 0, which means x is equal to 0, or x plus 1 is equal to 0, which means x is equal to minus 1. Both of these are possible, which is this is what we call as considering all cases, which means we don't get a unique value of x, which means statement 2 by itself is not enough, which means my correct answer is choice A. So, guys, which process skill, for those of you who made a mistake, and by 60% of you made a mistake, where did you make a mistake? Which process skill or which process skills did you make a mistake on? Let's get some responses here. And then tell me, are you looking forward to doing the next question? Let's get a few responses. Did not simplify. Okay, Nikita says. What else? A few other folks, because many people made a mistake here. Arpita also says simplification. Okay, I'm actually looking more on my phone over here because the responses come here a lot faster. What else? Did you guys consider all cases over here? What about constraints? That square of a number is always positive on the GMAT. What about applying constraints? What about applying constraints? Did anyone falter there? What about considering all cases on on the prior choice? Thought x is equal to 1 by x is wrong. Okay. All right. All right. So these are the three reasons why you could have gotten this wrong. You couldn't simplify, as you said. Some of you probably did not consider all cases when it came to option one, where you had to consider multiple cases. Or a few of you probably didn't apply the constraints that a square the square of a number is always non-negative. It's 0. The minimum value of a square of a number is 0, or it's positive. Okay. We have a bunch of video lessons that we offer free of charge on our YouTube channel, as well as another set of beautifully interactive video lessons on our portal. Take a look at those. But before that, let's get to our next question. Again, as was the case with the prior question, put your answers in the poll. The poll's there, and this looks very scary. But this is a fairly simple question if you do it diligently. So, and Bashar, you can't attempt the online GMAT free of cost. By the way, I don't think so. You can. So, okay, I'm going to mute myself. Good luck, guys. All right. Last 30 seconds. Let's get those answers in. Five, four, three, two, and one. Let me end the poll, or rather, I don't need to end the poll, but I'm going to say about 45%. Very similar to the prior question. 45% of the people, folks, got this question right. Let me just do one last refresh. If we got a few more responses, about 50% now. We got a few more responses over here. So let's go about seeing how we go about doing this. So you look at this and you say, okay, what's the question asking? What's the question asking is this expression or is this term odd? And whenever you see, so for a few things on the GMAT, guys, you won't, for 95% of the questions, you won't have to do a ton of math. That's the first piece. When you see a scary term, there is always a simplification there. Tell yourself, GMAT's not a math test, it's a test of logic. So when you see this and say, hey, is this odd? Um, tell yourself there has to be a simplification that I need to really do. And especially when you have the concept of notion of odd and even over here. So whenever you have odd, even, or greater than X or greater than Y, greater than 3, or so on and so forth, tell yourself, I don't have to do the math. What I have to do is approach this logically. So uh, these are the two statements that are given to us. And let's first look at what question stem tells us over here. Okay. So what we have to find is the sum of these four terms odd. And we're going to infer from this in this case. And what we are told is that A, B, C, and D, they are positive, distinct positive integers that are greater than 1. So it means they could be 2, 6, 8, 12, but they can't be negative, and n is also greater than 1, which means it's not 1 by 2 or something. So when you look at this, it's a sum of four numbers. There are 5 possible cases that exist. One is all of these numbers could be even. And why? Because power of a number is doesn't change its even odd nature. 3 is odd, 3 squares odd. 2 is odd, 2 squares odd. 3 cube is odd, 3 is odd. 2 cube is even, 2 is even. 4 is even, 4 squares even, so is 4 cube, and so is 4 to the power, whatever you might put in. So there are 4 possible options that exist. One is all of them could be, or 5 possible options. In that case, the sum is going to be even. The second is, hey, 3 of them could be even and 1 is odd. And in that case, the output is going to be odd. Why? Because odd plus even is always odd. So you say this plus this is odd. So this is an odd number. Then this plus this then becomes odd, which also means an odd number. And this plus this then becomes odd as well. And when I say plus, addition or subtraction doesn't matter. The even odd aspect doesn't matter. You could have 2 even and 2 odd. And in that case, the sum is always even. Why? Because odd plus odd is even. And then everything's even over here. Or you could have 1 even and 3 odd, which again, in that case, the output is going to be odd. Or you could have all 4 of them odd, in which case the output is going to be even. So when you think about this, when we simplify this and we consider all cases, the answer that we have to the question that we have to answer is one of them, or is 3 of those 4 numbers odd? If we have that answer, we essentially can figure out whether the sum is odd or not, or whether this expression is odd or not. Okay, and that's the inference that you need to put in. The question that you have to ask is 1 or 3 of these 4 numbers odd? With that information, let's kind of go over here and say, what does statement 1 say? And this is where you see statement 1. Statement 1 says A, B, C, and D are squares of consecutive natural numbers. Okay. Now remember, the power doesn't change the even odd nature, which means that if Uh, 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 eh, Out of these four numbers are 2, 3, 4, 5. Uh, Squares of 2, 3, 4, 5, or so. So A, B, C, and D are squares of 2, 3, 4, 5. 2 squares is always going to be even. 4 squares is always going to be even. 3 squares is always going to be odd. And 5 squares is always going to be odd. It could be 6, 7, 8, 9. Same thing. You'd always have two numbers that are even and two numbers that are odd. So we know that we have two numbers that are even, two numbers that are odd, which means the sum is always going to be even, which means we can answer this question, which means statement one is enough. Okay. Now we have two potential answers over here, which is either choice A or choice D, which is either statement alone is enough. So let's look at choice B of statement two and see whether choice B by itself is enough. Choice B gives me information only about A, and it says A raised to the power 4 when divided by 200 has the quotient 1. It doesn't tell me about the remainder or anything. So since it only gives me information about A, I don't know anything about the even odd nature of B, C, or D. We can't really tell you whether the sum is odd. Okay, which means statement 2 is not sufficient, which means choice A is my answer. Now, which process skills or core skills did, for those of you who made a mistake, did you falter on? Because half of you made a mistake. What did you not do? What did you not do over here? If you guys can put in those responses. And meanwhile, if you want to learn more about these process skills, if you want a few more examples about what each of these process skills is, then Atreya, if you can share the YouTube link, we have a playlist on these process skills that you could share. But meanwhile, I'd really just say, tell me what is it that uh, uh, led you to make that mistake. Did not and Ayushi says I did not infer that power doesn't change the even odd nature. That's good, Ayushi. Now you know that it happens, and again, it makes sense. And some of these things you've got to learn. What else? Because many of you made a mistake over here. All right, let's get to our last question. If no one's willing to put in that response. Again, if you weren't able to simplify, which is that, hey, or infer that I only need to worry about how many terms are even and how many terms are odd, as long as I can figure that out, I can get to the answer. That's something which is there. While doing this, if you did not consider all cases, which is that you could have 5 cases over here, um, that is also a reason why people could have faltered. And if you weren't able to infer information from statement A, what it really means, what information is it communicating, and if you tried doing the math, how many of you tried doing the math over here and took examples in this case? How many of you did that? Tried putting in numbers or somehow tried to solve this? Or how many of you actually just gave up and said, oh man, this seems super complex. There's no way in the world I could have solved this. How many of you did either one of these? Tried doing the math, tried substituting numbers, or really just felt this is out of the world. I cannot solve this. Okay. Srinath says I gave up. Okay. Srinath, if you gave up, if you're not used to stuff such as this, then I would say take a look at our the files in our trial, and this is where this entire trial, I mean, is built on a new learning architecture, which is designed to replicate. Actually, it's designed to be way more fine-grained than what a private tutor does. In number properties, for example, we have about 100 learning paths over here. Every module you start with a diagnostic level, and that diagnostic tells you what you need to do and what you don't need to do. So essentially, if you're an 80th percentile guy, you only need to focus on a certain part of the course. If you're a 20th percentile guy, you need to focus on all of the course over here. So the beauty of this is it tells you where you need to channelize your efforts, and then it tracks your improvement as you move forward. So take a look at the even odd module, log on to the eGMAT account, um, and see how in about a day, just in even odd, you need about a day or about 4 hours, you can go from being that 20th percentile guy to that 80th percentile guy. And you're going to love the interactivity over here. This is a brand new learning architecture that we've built just for this course, and it's a learning architecture that we'd be imbibing going forward. Okay. With that, I'm going to give you a few more minutes over here. In this case, to register, and then we'll do the last question. And you already see the poll question for the last one over here: 3, 2, and 1. Here is the last question. I'm going to give you about 3 minutes to solve this question, and then we're going to have fun with this. And as always, please put those answers in the poll link. Anjal, put those responses in the poll, please. All right, guys, 30 seconds. Get those answers in the poll. The poll is here. All right, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, get those responses in. Okay, how many of you chose choice C, the way Anshul did. Let's kind of get some stuff going on over here. How many of you chose choice C? And versus B versus A versus D. So let's kind of put all your polls in here. Okay, let's get a few more responses. How many of you chose? Put in your answer. Put in the answer choices that you chose over here. Okay, I have A, C. Okay, good. C, two C's, three C's, one A. And C is very tempting also because you say, hey, it's 2P plus Q and P plus 2Q, which means you can get P and Q, which means, yes, you can really get that over here. Manmeet says A. So let's look at how we're going to do this. The question says, what's the remainder, which means you have to find the actual value of the remainder when the positive 3-digit number 7PQ is divided by 8. Okay. So you say, hey, man, I have this number 7PQ. Why does the test maker, why did he give me the 7PQ? And he's saying divided by 8. So let's kind of simplify this and see. So I can write 7PQ as 7 times 100, which means 700, plus 10 times P plus Q. Okay, that's what 7PQ is, right? Or what's a number. Okay, so I translate that. That's where the process skills of translate comes in. And I have to express this as 8 times something. So 8's the divisor, A is the quotient, plus a remainder. And this is the remainder that I need to worry about. Okay. So where the remainder has a constraint that it has to be greater than or equal to 0 and it has to be less than 8. This is your classic remainder equation. By the way, we have a session on this equation. It's a beautiful session where we take you from the basics to the most advanced, to solving the most advanced questions. Okay, so let's kind of simplify this over here. We have this statement, and we're going to simplify this in terms of 8. We're going to really express 700 as 696 plus 4. Why? Because 696 is divisible by 8. We're going to express 10p as 8p plus 2p. Why? Because again, I can divide 8p by 8. I know whatever, regardless of the value of p, 8p will always be divisible by 8. And then I have q. That's how that's the process skill of manipulation, which means I actually I have this expression as 8 times 87 plus p. Where did you get 87? You got 87 from 696. 8 times 87 is 696. And then you got 8 times p. This is where you put in over here. Plus 4, you got this 4 from here. Plus 2p plus q. So when you look at this over here, what you essentially have is a term that's divisible by 8. Remember, we said we have to express this as 8a plus r. We have a term that's divisible by 8, and then we have a term that will give us the remainder. Okay. So let's kind of simplify this even further. What is my remainder? My remainder is 4 plus 2p plus q if that's less than 8, or if 4 plus 2p plus q is greater than or equal to 8, then I have my remainder is going to be the residual value of that. So that's that's kind of what I infer after this manipulation. This is the process skill of inference when I consider all cases. How many of you were able to do this translation and were able to simplify this to really say, hey, this is what this term is what's going to give my remainder? Okay. So what is now? This question becomes very simple. What's given to us is 2p plus q is 7, which means 2p plus q plus 4, which remember was this term over here, 2p plus 4 plus 2p plus q. So 4 plus 2p plus q becomes 7 plus 4, which means it's 11. But remember, we had the constraint that the remainder has to be less than the divisor, which means that we can express 11 as 1 times 8 plus 3, which means 3 is my remainder. Choice A is enough. Okay. Everyone clear with why choice A is enough to answer this question? Everyone clear with that? Yes, no? Let's see. Let me go to UT1 on my phone. Let's look at again. Let's look at now statement 2. Statement 2 says P plus 2Q is 11, which means you can express P as 11 minus 2Q. Okay. Now our remainder was 2P plus Q plus 4. Again, let's do the substitution, and which means the remainder now becomes 26 minus 3Q. Now, we don't have any information on Q. Q could be any number from 0 to 9, so which means it could lead to any set of values, which means it could lead to any set of remainders. So, since we can't get a value of R, we can say statement 2 is not sufficient. My correct answer is choice A. Srinath says, isn't it easier that there are only 2 combinations possible from statement 1 and both leave the remainder 3 plug-in method? In this case, you can 3. What if there were another way? I mean, you could, that plug-in method in certain cases will work, in certain other cases will not work. One of the things which, and you'd see us talk about tricks, you'd see us talk about these plug-in methods, is we don't advocate a lot of plug-in methods. Why? Because here is what happens, guys. People who need these plug-in methods, or people who can use these plug-in methods, actually don't need them. To be able to plug in numbers, you need to be, for most difficult questions, you need to be at a level of understanding where you know the alternate way already. Okay. And for people who actually can't solve it the regular way, for them to be able to understand, can I apply a plugin on difficult question, becomes difficult. And so which is where we focus more on a purist approach, and we've seen way more results. If you go to our reviews in the last 2 months since the launch of the new Quant course, you're going to really see people go from that Q40 to Q49. You're going to see those incredible score improvements that are very pertinent, very similar to what you see on the verbal side of things. And it is the purest approach. The beauty of it is, Sri, the reason you were able to probably apply this over here is because you can do the other way. You're reasonably good otherwise. So so yes, for you it makes sense. For most people who are here, it doesn't. But yes, good part. So when you think about this, again, tell yourself, why is it? This was an interesting question. This did require manipulation. Why is it that you weren't able to solve? Which process skill did you falter on? And because you had this question had translate, manipulate, constraints, and infer. And this question was among the 3 questions that we did, the more challenging question. It's probably the most challenging of 3 questions. And you can see questions become more challenging as we put in more process skills over here. Even then, there wasn't a lot of math. It was these process skills. You weren't doing a lot of crazy number calculations over there. Okay. So which process skills did you falter on? Which process skills did you falter on, guys? Let's get some answers over there. Also, Atreya, who's supporting me in this webinar, would be hosting a webinar on remainders on the 31st, which is Sunday, and we're going to apply this process skill based approach on remainders question. We're going to start from the very basics. So in this session, we actually started from 700 level questions, but in that session, we're going to start from the very basics. We're going to go to intermediate level questions. We're going to talk about positive and negative remainders. We're going to apply those, and then we're going to solve some very, very challenging 700 level data sufficiency questions towards the end. And then, I mean, that's probably one of the most enjoyable sessions. I conduct that session half the time, and it's one of the most enjoyable sessions to host. Why? Because at the end of it, people really get a lot out of the session. They feel that they've improved. So definitely register for that over here. For those of you who are struggling with either quant or verbal, I want to just tell you that, if you are at a Q38, Q40, Q41, it is possible to improve. And stories such as this are examples where people have improved over here. So Leo, he was someone who struggled. I was stuck at a Q45. Again, the very same process skills that we're talking about over here. Now, what helped him improve? The first thing is build that right study plan. Understand where you need to focus your energy. The second thing is have that methodical approach. So this actually works in the other way around. And then you can do focused learning and practice. You've got to decide, depending on what your starting ability is, whether you need to focus on learning and building that process, or you need um, to refine that process. And in this case, in many cases, you need to refine that process. He got admitted to Stern, Tepper, and Wharton, and he chose to go to Wharton, which I'm thinking most of you would be doing. Will you be hosting an equality session? We'll be doing an inequality session very soon. So register on eGMAT. You'll be seeing a session on inequalities very, very soon. And again, if you've not booked a study session with one of our mentors to get that personalized study plan, to understand how long will it take for you to study for the GMAT, then please do that. And and that way you would know how long you need, what your target score should be, and where do you need to focus your energy. Okay. So, what do you think about strategic review? What do you think it can do for you? What do you think about this entire process of figuring out why you made a mistake and then creating a revision plan? While you put your answers in, the key thing that I want you to focus on is that, hey, solving difficult questions isn't rocket science. It's about applying the process. And as you apply the process, understand where you're faltering, why you're faltering. Because as you do that, you progressively improve. And as you improve, you get to that 750 score over here. Um, Attributing causality, is really important, and which is where that strategic review process comes in this case. And the last piece is, to be able to figure out why you made a mistake, you need those detailed solutions, the kind of solutions that we provided in this webinar, so that you can really figure out, hey, this is the step where I faltered, and this is the reason why I faltered. A lot of the times, when I look at forums, I see people asking, I can't understand a particular question, and what and people just focus on, hey, this is a modifier error, this is a parallelism error, but they don't focus on why they made that modifier error, what caused them to make that modifier error. Once you figure out what caused you to make that error, and then you can really improve from there. So Sri said, we could build a baseline what we need to focus on rather than just practice questions. We can really do that. Um, uh, if you already have it, so there are what we call as stages of learning. So Sri, you got it right that it builds a baseline. Yes, it gives you causality, but just practicing questions will not help you if the method that you're using is wrong. For example, in sentence correction, if you don't know how to extract meaning out of various sentences, then even though meaning may be a reason why you're faltering, if you don't know the method, you can practice and practice questions, you're not going to improve beyond a point. Similarly, if you don't know how to create that pre-thinking question stem, you won't be able to do that. If you don't know the meaning of words such as some, most, the, and how the impact that they have in sentences and how it leads to different visualizations, then you won't be able to do that. So I think it just depends on where you are in that ability curve. If you are at that 70th percentile, then yes, it can tell you where you're weak, and then practice can help you over there. And yes, it removes what we call as a score plateau. So if you again go to our reviews and you see these people who went from the 700 to 770, the question is, they were already at 700. They had tried really hard at improving beyond that 700, and they weren't able to. Some of them actually took multiple attempts, and which is where they said, okay, I've got to figure out where am I faltering. And once you figure out where you're faltering, which methods are you using incorrectly, That's when that improvement, this, scenario one, you were stuck at 700 for 2 months. Scenario two, you went from that 700 to that 750 in about 20 days. To get that scenario two, you need that input. Can you suggest any good online course? So Rani, use eGMAT. Um, Try us out. See if that learning style suits you. Any other question, guys? And by the way, most people do self-study. I mean, when you think about classroom courses or even studying from books don't give you feedback. Most online courses don't give you feedback either. The course that actually is way more effective than just reading from a book or going to a classroom course is one that personalizes your learning. And out of probably all the GMAT Club partners, probably two courses that do that. One is ours and the other one is another company that I won't mention. And if you go to the review section, if you look at which course where do which courses are delivering success, you're going to find just those two courses account for about 85% of the success that's delivered on GMAT Club. Um, so uh, so yeah, there's data there, there's good evidence there. Similarly, take a look at our YouTube channel and look at the success stories that are there and see which resonate with you. You'd see people who've gone to Harvard, you'd see people who've gone to Stanford, Ross, Columbia, GSP, Chicago, Wharton, and so on and so forth. You can really see how they started. You can see how they went about improving over there. And it's the world's largest collection of success stories anywhere. So our channel is about 137 unedited. These are not people who are saying, hey, I used eGMAT and that was great. These are people, they said, this is how I started my study, this is what I referred, this is what I did really well, this is where I struggled, and this is how I overcame those struggles. How do eGMAT instructors interact with the students to give consistent personalized guidance? We actually have a platform that does that. We've spent upwards of $10 million doing R&D on that platform, where we give you personalized feedback every 30 minutes. I mean, this is way more personalized than a private tutor is. As you book that one-on-one session, the insights that you will get from that 30 minutes, you're going to learn more about where you stand than what you've learned in a few months over there. So take a Sigma X mock, book that one-on-one session, and you'd really see the data-driven approach. Watch some of those videos, and you'd really see how people improve. You'd see the consistency with which success stories are posted. And when you do that and you look at some of the other channels, then you ask yourself, why is it that there isn't enough success over there? As eGMAT, our motto when we started this company 10 years ago was to really say, hey, how can we make an online course better than a classroom course? We did that in 2016. For the last 5 years, we've been working on how can we make an online course better than starting with a private tutor? And this is where a lot of our content and technology investments are. And think about it, we're about a 44-person company. Everyone works full time. And we choose just the GMAT. We don't do the GRE. We don't do the SAT or ACT or for that matter, any other test. So, and thank you, Anjana, for that feedback. I do appreciate that. So, just as a since we started this session with a trivia, let's end this with a trivia. Do you know how many personalized doubts, which is what we call as forum post responses, do our experts respond to in a week? Just these are subject matter responses. These are not GMAT strategy responses. These are just subject matter responses. Any guesses? This is just one-on-one doubts that people post on the platform. That number is about 500 in a week or about 2,000 in a month or so. When you compare this to experts responding on any other platform, even on GMAT Club, I don't believe experts put in more than 70 to 80 subject matter responses in a week. Similarly, our GMAT strategy folks respond to about 400 queries a week. And all of that's done within that 18-hour SLA. Okay, guys, with that, I hope you guys enjoyed this. It was a pleasure hosting this. I hosted a webinar after a very long time. I hope you guys had fun. I had a lot of fun doing this. And I look forward to seeing you on egmat.com. We're hosting a session, the SC session, on Saturday, or in the remainder session on Sunday, the number property session on Sunday. Thank you very much and have a great day.